Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of When the Shift Hits the Fan. We want to welcome everyone to our special call again tonight. Last week I was here sharing my story of a year with cancer, and tonight we're going to hear from Linda, my beautiful co-host. You know, we started when the shift, I want to say something we had, just, and Linda doesn't even know this either, and it may not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but when you start off with small aspirations, we have our, this week, our 3,000th view of our shows. So we want to thank everyone for listening in over the last year for us. And we want to bring you some great content and help you through the dusty parts of life that sometimes get really raw and muddy and dirty. So I don't want to take up a lot of time tonight because I know Linda has a lot to share with you and her breast cancer journey. So Linda, I'm going to turn it right over to you, sweetheart.
Well, thank you, Mark, and good evening. And that's really exciting news to know that we've had our 3,000th view. That's pretty awesome. So I know that what we're doing, or that we have been doing over the last couple of weeks, is incredibly important to our listeners, and that's, quite frankly, Mark, that's one thing that's gotten me through my anticipation of tonight's show. You did a beautiful job last week sharing your story and sharing the darkness that you had to go through, and I know how difficult that was for you. And so I was facing this show tonight, and I will confess, I wasn't looking forward to it. And the reason for that is because I am used to rallying the troops, making sure that we keep the energy up, we keep it high, we are in a position that we feel really good. But knowing the number of people that I know that we can help, if they truly understand the hell that we've gone through, and then they see us on the other side, which we'll touch on, and we'll start in June with the Jewels of June, with Words of Wisdom, and how we got through and busted through the darkness. But in order to come into the light, then we have to know that we're in darkness. And so that got me through my butterflies and my reluctance for tonight's show, knowing how many people we're going to help. And I think it really had me revisiting this fear. It's all, whether it's fear that we experience with our health, or fear in doing something different or something new in business and life and relationships. It still comes down to that fear. And it's an immobilizing fear, and that's what I experienced. But before I talk about my breast cancer story, the clutches of fear had a hold of me way before I was ever diagnosed. And I have to go back that far in order for our listeners to understand the clutches of fear that I was in. Many, many years ago, my parents brought myself and my brothers and our spouses together, and they broke the news to us that my dad had prostate cancer. Now, that was during a period of time in my life where I had pretty much put aside studying personal growth material that I had. And so this news of my dad really hit me hard, and I was afraid for him. And I watched my dad have high points and low points, and he was a trooper. He fought this thing for 9 years. He was given the opportunity to have the latest and greatest treatment at that time, and this is in the early 1990s. My children, his grandchildren, were very young, and I was fearful. I was thinking, oh no, It was the big C word. It was the big cancer, and it had attacked my family. It had attacked my dad, and I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I watched him, and he started treatment. He went through radiation. He went through surgery. He went through chemotherapy. I watched the chemotherapy just tear a wonderful man down. It did things to his body systems that it pretty much can strip away your dignity. And so I watched this wonderful, vibrant, healthy man just be torn down over a series of 9 years, and it frightened me. It truly, Mark, scared me.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where through a series of opportunities, we actually moved away. And the reason, I know that one of the biggest reasons that we moved away is because I was so afraid of what was happening to my dad. And so, I was locking all of this stuff inside of me. Well, he finally passed, and I was able to get back home before he left us. Unfortunately, my daughters weren't able to. I mean, I flew back, they drove back, or Randy drove them back. And, we had a lot to deal with there because, my kids wanted to see their grandpa and they weren't able to. So I kind of went on, and I know a lot of our listeners can probably relate to this. After the funeral and everything, we definitely talked about and remembered all the good times. But I pretty much tucked that darkness and that fear, I tucked it away somewhere inside. And then many years later, my mom pulled us all together, and she was showing me some her ultrasound films of her breast, and she said that they're going to do a biopsy. They don't know what this is yet. Now, at that time, I had been working in a surgeon's office, and I had seen this before. And that fear inside of me came rushing back out of the corners that I had tucked it in, and all of a sudden I was feeling that same fear again. But this time it had attacked my mom. And yes, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had, it was very small, and she had a lumpectomy. But 4 years later, it came back. And then she went through a mastectomy. And again, at that time I was not living in my hometown, and the distance helped me get through that. But again, Mark, I tucked that fear deep inside. So I was truly living a life on the outside. I was living a life, looked like smiles and grins, and everything was wonderful. But inside of me, I was just a prisoner in the clutches of fear. Because now I'm thinking, okay, my dad had cancer, and it killed him. My mom had cancer. Okay, so far she's okay. But I saw what she went through. I saw what he went through. And now I'm starting to think, when is it my turn? And so this thought of this debilitating cancer, whatever form it was, pretty much was always on my mind. Whether I acknowledged it or not, it was always there. It was always lurking. And the reason it was there is because I had never, ever confronted the fear. I was just thinking that if I tucked it away deep enough, I wouldn't have to deal with it. It's kind of like if there's some, you have an unruly child, some people just say, well, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. Well, I was just trying to ignore this fear that was clutching me because it would go away. So now we fast forward a few more years, and I remember as a child hearing my mom and my aunts have conversations, and they were talking about their mother, and just kind of joking around about the fact that, my grandmother never liked to go to the doctor because she was always fearful that if she went to the doctor, then they would find something wrong with her. And I think that really implanted itself in my young mind that, if you go to the doctor, they're going to find something wrong. They're going to find something bad. So I confess, and I don't recommend to any of our listeners, I was very lax on annual checkups and annual mammograms and things like that. Yeah, I had some along the way, but I was not diligent because I felt good. I was very healthy, and again, I think that nagging fear, well, if I go get things checked out, they're going to find something wrong, and I don't want them to find anything wrong, so I'm not going to go. So one day, I was looking in the mirror after I had a shower, and I thought that something didn't look quite right. I thought on one side of one breast, it was kind of underneath. Was that a shadow of the light? What was that? I didn't know. And I kind of felt around, and maybe I felt something, maybe I didn't feel anything. But I felt this panic rush inside my stomach, but then I quickly pushed it away, saying, "Oh, it's nothing. Linda, you're getting older. You're over 50. Your body's changing. Don't worry about it." And so I ignored it. But then I would think about it all the time. And so then I started feeling around quite often, and then I thought, I think I feel something. But again, I was in the clutches of that fear that had come back, that was hiding deep within me, and I was afraid to go get it checked out because I was afraid that they're going to find something. I was afraid that maybe it would be breast cancer. But then there comes a point in time where logic just doesn't have a place anymore. And so I was getting very, very good at talking myself into trying to believe that it was nothing. I drink a lot of coffee, so it could be a fibroid, or it could be a cyst, or it could be anything else. So I don't need to worry about it. It's just part of the aging process. I was not able to break myself out of this fear. I wasn't able to get my head and my heart and my gut all working together to push me into going and getting this checked out. For a year, I lived with this, knowing that I had something there, but not able to push myself. It's like I was paralyzed when it came to getting this thing checked out. And I have to say, I got very good at maneuvering and hiding what was happening to me from my husband. I mean, we have a wonderful relationship, but I knew that if I told him about this, then the first thing that he would say is, go get it checked out. And so I got very good at making sure that he didn't notice that there was something there. And at that time, too, I was thinking, well, I've been studying, because I picked up my studies again with personal growth and trying to figure out how the brain works and how our body works. And so I was studying everything I could get my hands on regarding energy and energy healing and what you can do or how you can convince your mind to heal your body. I mean, I was studying all of this and trying all of these things, and I was quite frankly arrogant, thinking that, well, I'm getting good at this, so I know that I can make this go away. But the big argument that I was having in my head was, how can you make something go away when you don't really know what it is yet? And that's a very logical argument, and that should have pushed me to go get things checked out, but I still didn't. Well, as healthy of a person as I am, somehow in August of 2012, I got very ill. I was coughing and I had a fever, and it finally pushed me to go see a physician. Because even in the medical field I'm in, I knew that if you were running a fever and you're wheezing, and it was probably not a good sign. You need to go see the doctor. So I went and saw the doctor, and for the very first time in my life, I was diagnosed with pneumonia. And it was on the left side, which is the same side I was having an issue with in my left breast. So I received treatment for that, but the doctor said that if it didn't get any better in a couple of weeks, that he wanted to do a chest x-ray. Okay, that sent me back into panic mode because I thought, ooh, if I have a chest x-ray, then they may see this lump that I now feel, and then I'm going to have to go get it checked out. Well, the good news for me is I got over the pneumonia within that 2 weeks, but it was strange for me to get it. So at that point in time, I would actually be waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, going to my computer and doing research. Again, just trying to figure out if this could be anything else except what I feared, again, that it was, which I feared that it was breast cancer. So I finally, one day in September, I like to, I guess, say that I opened up to, Linda, you're being foolish. Make an appointment. Get this thing checked out. So I made the appointment in the United States. You have to have a primary care physician, and then that physician has to write you an order to go get your mammogram and start the process. And so went to primary care physician. She looked at it, and I was telling myself stories, guys. Like, we have three labs, and they're very rambunctious. And we were in a 2-story house, and we'd play on the stairs. And I know one time I was coming down the stairs, rounded the corner, and I landed on the corner because I got pushed over by one of the dogs. We were racing to see who was going to get to the bottom first. And I bumped my left breast, and it really, really hurt. And I know I bruised it. And so I was telling myself that, oh, this is just maybe a scar tissue or a clot or something. And that's actually the story I told the primary care physician when I went in for my checkup. Again, guys, you have to realize this is all fear that I am allowing to guide me through this denial process that I was going through. So anyway, I knew what the process was at that point in time. I was going to get the mammogram. They were going to find something. I was going to have to go back and start, get ultrasounds and biopsies and all this other fun stuff, and that's exactly what happened. I got the mammogram. 2 weeks later, they called me and said, you need to come back in. We need to do this. We need to do another one, and we need to do an ultrasound because we found something. At that point in time, I did tell Randy, I said, look, I've got this lump, and we're going to get it checked out. And, of course, the first question he asked me was, how long has it been there? And so I confessed, and I told him it had been there a year, and I apologize. I'm really sorry. I hid this from you. I felt a lot better after I finally told him the story. But, again, I don't recommend anyone hide that from anyone that they love especially. But he forgave me, of course, and he said he was with me this whole way. So the day of the ultrasound, after the ultrasound was done, the radiologist came in, and he didn't have very good bedside manner because he just looked at me and he said, you have cancer, and it's got to come out, and it's got to come out now. And, I just looked at him and I said, okay, so what's my next step? Now, the ultrasound tech who had been with me was almost in tears for me, but I had been in denial so long and been engulfed with this fear so long that I was just numb. I didn't feel scared at that point or excited, or I was just numb. And so they actually got me an appointment with a surgeon for the next day. And I was driving home, and to tell you how numb I was, I had driven this route multiple times, and it didn't even dawn on me till I was probably, I would say, almost 20 miles down the road that I turned the wrong direction. I was going home the wrong way. So I had to turn around and go back and retrace my steps, and I had a good talk to myself that like maybe I should pay attention to my driving. So I went and saw the surgeon in my area the next day, and he said, well, if I can feel this, I'll go ahead and do a biopsy today, which I wasn't expecting. And that was incredibly painful. But I got through it, and he called a couple of days later with the results and wanted me to come back in, and he said that he said he believed it was cancer. It was suspicious. They obviously had to do more workup. But I had been doing some research, and at that point in time, I was still being very arrogant on what I thought that I needed to have done. And so, I told him, well, I want to have this done and this procedure done, which was a mastectomy with reconstruction using my tummy fat, which they did not do in my area. And as a blessing, I was referred up to Birmingham. And so again, I went in. I had some tests done in Birmingham, another biopsy. This was a more extensive one, and several other tests. And then I met with the team. And again, I was very arrogant. I thought, well, I already know what I want to do. I'm just going to go in. I'm going to tell them, okay, we're going to do this mastectomy. We're going to do this reconstruction. This is all going to be put behind me. When you go meet with the team at a cancer center, especially this one, you meet with an oncologist, you meet with a surgeon, and you meet with a radiological oncologist. And they all get together, and based on your test results, then they map out a plan. You can call it a plan of attack. It's a treatment plan. But then they all agree on this treatment plan, and then they come in and they see you together, all of them in the same room at the same time. So that was going to be my exam or my visit that day. Well, while I was waiting in the room, I opened the door because we'd been waiting for quite a while, and I just happened to look at the room across the hall, and it was a couple. They had opened their door. He was putting the coat on the woman he was with, his wife, I assume. They were both pale. The energy coming from them was very negative, very scary. I mean, they had fear on their faces, and, I was just looking them straight in the eye, and, that just kind of put me off my game a little bit. I was already kind of off my game because when I went into that room, a volunteer came. She gave me a big hug. She said that she was one of their angels, and she gave me a gift bag with some nice bath things. And then a lady from the American Cancer Society came into my room, and she was talking with me about wigs. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't need that because I'm not going to have anything that's going to make me lose my hair. So then the team came in, and I have to tell you, the energy in the room was very depressed. They were very solemn. And then I heard what I had not expected to hear. What they told me was, Linda, you do have cancer. It's a grade 3 of 3. It's invasive. And we think we need to treat this aggressively. The surgeon examined me, and she said, I could do the surgery right now, but I don't think that you would be happy with it because we think that this has invaded your chest wall, and I think that I would have to take more than what you would be comfortable with. So we think your best option is for us to treat this thing first before we ever considered doing surgery. And then the oncologist started talking. And at that point in time, there was no place for me to hide from my fear. Because he was looking me in the eye, and he said, you've let this go on for a year. And, bless him, he was like, it was almost like he was a father talking to his young child who had gotten in a little bit of trouble. And he said, you should have had regular exams. You should have been checking this out. We could have caught this a lot earlier. So we think that your only options are to go through chemotherapy first so that we can attempt to shrink this tumor down. He said, you will lose your hair. This is going to be a 26-week process. And because we think that this is so bad, we believe that you qualify for clinical trials. So we can give you, if you choose to, we can watch you more closely. We can put you in the clinical trial. It will afford you some additional tests that your insurance normally wouldn't pay for. Well, somewhere in that speech that he gave me, I zoned out because I was being engulfed again with this overwhelming sense of fear. And it's all that fear that I tucked away long ago that had been back there and in there festering and festering and festering. And it just totally overwhelmed me. And I wasn't really grasping what he was saying. I think I had to have him repeat it several times. And I know that when Randy and I left that exam room, we went to dinner to kind of think about things and regroup ourselves. And, I don't recommend this for anyone, but we went to a chain, Chili's restaurant. And after 3 margaritas, I don't know what I ate, but I was literally bawling my eyes out in the middle of the restaurant because all of this had finally overwhelmed me and the fear had taken hold. And there was nothing that I could do at that point in time but just give into it. Because now, my greatest fear had been realized. Mm-hmm. My parents had cancer. I had cancer. I went to the doctor. They found something bad. And so at that point in time, I was just mush on the table. And I see, Mark, we're at the end of our half hour. And I just want to leave our listeners with, I guess, a glimmer of light, because beginning next week, we're going to show you, we're going to talk with you and have conversations about how you go from being totally imprisoned in the clutches of fear, being mush on a table in a public restaurant, to being a vibrant, very much alive, very energetic, healthy, unlimited person that I am today and that Mark is today.
Yeah,
that's all I got, Mark.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Linda, for sharing that. There's lots I want to talk about. I've been writing notes as you've been talking. Some things that people have asked me over the course of the last week since they've heard the show and asking different questions. We will address all of them, my friends. We promise you that. But the thing is what I want to leave tonight is we all have fears. And fears come from things that aren't real. And they happen to manifest themselves in different ways in our lives. And we say just what Linda said. Oh, my mom had cancer. My dad had cancer. Now I have cancer. I told you. We validate our fears. And when we do things like that, and we all do it, none of us are immune to this. Even Tony Robbins, even Jim Rohn, all of these guys, Bob Proctor, they all will tell you this. We're all susceptible to this. It's how we manage it after that. And that's the things that you're going to learn over the next few weeks, because we had to learn them. We're not, somebody didn't come down with a little wand and go, there you go, you're all good now. That didn't happen. We're going to tell you what did happen next. And we want you to come along with our journey. Linda, You are the most gorgeous woman inside and out that I think I've ever met, and I'm so privileged to know. So thank you again for coming out and sharing your story. Thank you for all our listeners for being here, and we'll get this replay up as soon as we can so you can listen to it all over again and grab a little bit of hope because it's there. So for Mark here in Canada, good night, everyone.
And from Linda in Florida, good night.